those of you who don't know me, my name's Dan O'Callaghan. I've been playing poker for like years and years and years. Spins for the last two-ish, something like that. Form I really love the flexibility of them. Also, can't describe how much playing spins has just improved my game, especially post flop overall. Um, you've got to be really critical and really disciplined, and there are areas that MTT players I think kind of struggle with sometimes. It's easy to kind of one table and half watch Hollyoaks or some bullshit on the TV. So um, I'm just going to give brief intro to spins. Just talk about like the format, how you calculate your win rates, and in the end, we'll get on to some basic strategies that will probably be enough to beat the lower stake games. And then I've got a few hands that have been sent in, so we'll go through them. I haven't had the chance to look at them yet, but we'll just if we have time, we'll go through them. Okay. So what are spins? Most of you probably already know this, but for the sake of thoroughness, we'll just go through them. The structures vary depending on what site you are, but more often than not, they are three-handed hypos. There's four-handed variants. I don't really have any experience with them. So yeah, three-handed hypos. Normally they have 3-minute blinds. Sometimes they have antes from the off, like the iPoker ones do, which makes things a little faster. But party and stuff, things are a little slower. So it's kind of hard to say which one's the best, because the fast structures, you get more volume in, so you like get more rake back, which is massive for spin players. But obviously, because they're a little faster, a little shallower, so the edges are slightly smaller, so you'll struggle to have quite as high win rate. So it depends on, I guess, whether or not you want to like be a volume grinder or you would like to really focus on your decisions. But it's tough to say which one's more preferable. Because you start so shallow, the deepest you are, unless you kind of stack someone early, is going to be like 25 to 30 big blinds. But for the most part, you're going to be like 10 to 15. So you need to be really careful, because reshoving is a massive part of the game. And it's not uncommon, like, for people just to rejam 25 big blinds as standard and make things kind of easier for them. There's not a lot of small blind play, aside from like some 3-betting, pre-flop at least, versus buttons. So because reshoving's so big, you need to have kind of tighter button ranges than you would in an MTT. So that's something to bear in mind when you're kind of constructing your reshoving range. And as I say, you need to have tighter small blind ranges. So the solvers don't really like any small blind flatten at all, aside from completing when it's limped on the button, which doesn't happen that often, but does happen sometimes. So for the most part, you want to kind of just play either 3-bet fold or shove fold from the small blind. They're kind of a cross between MTT and cash games, in that they have like the chip format, but aside from busting players and things, they're actually more like a cash game in how the chips are measured. There's no ICM, even in the tournaments where first place, second and third are paid. Like second and third tend to get the same amount anyway, so it's just the same as winning zero. So no ICM in them at all. It's all about chips, essentially. And because of that, you need to be really precise with all of your bet sizing. So if you're just calling off like 80 chips or whatever, knowing you're dead, well, then it's just burning money. There's a direct correlation between the chips and the amount of money you need. So you've got to be really conscious of your bet sizing and really precise, and just have the discipline, because a couple of bad calls can just completely kill your tournament, really. But we'll kind of look at that a little bit more later on. Probably won't get too much into bet sizing this time. Maybe some basic stuff, but it's kind of there's quite a bit to it. But the win rates, as I say, they don't follow either a cash game or an MTT format. They kind of have their own way of tracking spin win rates. So we'll look at like the benefits of them. So one of the best ones for me is the flexibility of them. I used to hate, and it's really hard as well I used to hate the long sessions, and it's really hard if you're playing for like 11, 12 hours into a session, you're tired, you're not going to be playing your best. And in tournaments, that's massive because that's when you're at the business end of things. So I quite like being able to dip and in and out. I mean, I'm 30, Jesus, I'm 31 now. So like, I can't sit around, and I don't really want to sit around for 25 hours at a time anymore. So I really like the flexibility of them. If you want to just squeeze in an hour before you go for dinner or whatever, you can just do that. Challenges your post flop play. Uh, Generally, like because you're playing so many hands, and because there's only everything's three-handed, you're playing with wide ranges across the board. So that improves your post flop play massively. In tournaments, like I'm using tournaments as a go-to because I know that I'm assuming that everybody is kind of a tournament reg more than a cash game reg. Um, but in tournaments, when you're looking at like under the gun ranges, middle position ranges, and even your defending ranges, they're kind of a lot tighter. So you post flop, you don't have to worry about as many combinations. Like if you know someone's opening from like middle position, they're not going to have like, or they shouldn't really have like ace two off or king three off, or things like that, or nine five suited. So because you're playing three handed, the ranges are way wider, so you get better at hand reading because you now have to fully range someone. They don't just suddenly have only the top 25% of hands. So eventually, it kind of takes a while to get used to, but it makes the game way more interesting because it's not just like, oh, this guy's open from middle position, the boards come 6-3-8. I have a range advantage here because I've defended the big blind. You know what I mean? They can have anything because most of it's blind be blind. In the long term, this will give you an edge, even if you don't plan on playing spins, like dabbling into them, dabbling into them will give you an advantage when you go back to playing MTTs because you're going to have more experience playing three-handed and heads up. Generally speaking, tournament players don't really focus on it. All of the advice they're looking for is like full ring and the situations they're in more often, which kind of makes sense. But if you think about the format of tournaments, because the winner gets the lion's share and, second and third, like the increments there are massive and they really affect your bottom line. So if you can have a big edge and a lot of experience over the other guys, well, then you're going to make more money in the long term. It's kind of, I keep losing my train of thought a little bit because I can hear myself in the background. So I'll try to bear with it. So yeah, it's really if you
sense story.
Yeah, so, well, good as a start. So even if you don't plan on playing spins long term, I would still recommend you maybe even just spend like a month just getting used to it and just get like, I don't know, 30,000 hands in. Like that's going to be way more than the average like tournament reg's going to have. Because most people only play heads up when they get heads up. They'll just default to kind of shoving Nash ranges and things. And that's really the highest variance, lowest skill edge way of playing a tournament. So you kind of shoot yourself in the foot taking that approach to it. Just said that. Yeah. And again, like you'll just be able to hand read better. Another part of it, which will help a game when you're three-handed. You'll also be more confident in your ranges as well because especially in tournaments, like if you're not used to being short-handed and you get like a really bad distribution, so you're just getting dog shit hands, you'll realize that you've just got to have like belief in your ranges and you'll know that like, oh shit, you'll feel like you're getting run over, but you'll be confident enough to know that it's just because of the distribution, like you're not really doing anything wrong. And that should stop you like getting frustrated and just like spazzing off your tournament. Yeah, so as I say, like if you don't have time for a full session, you can just boot up a couple of spins and just get in a short session. As I say, you don't get affected emotionally. It's not like we all know what it's like to be 8 hours into a tournament and come like 15th and just like hate life and want to retire and just go and be a bin man or something. You don't have that with these. Like yes, when you get a big multiplier, like it's a bit annoying if you don't win that, but you've only got a few minutes invested in it. Like it's really easy to get over with. It's like a girlfriend, like a long-term girlfriend's going to take a while to get over, but one night stands you're going to forget about pretty quickly, even if she's pretty good. Yeah, so I'd say really easy to take a break when you're tired of tilting. Another thing with tournaments, like if you're 5 hours in, you can't really be asked anymore. Like I'm sure Mike does them on just donkey tournament off. So um, you don't have that here. If you're tired, just you realize you're making mistakes, then you can just quit. One of the things I do when I play is I try to um, is keep like a tick list. So I'll have like three poker chips or three coins or something, or just three things. And if I make like a mistake or I know I should fold in that call, I'll I'll lose one of my coins. And if I lose all three, then I'll force myself to take a break. It just means that you're constantly sharp. So you can, if you're clever about it, you can always make sure that you're playing as close to A game as possible. Because there's no point playing any format of poker. Like even if you're a good player, one of the best quotes I ever heard was, "It's not enough." I don't know where it comes from, so if anyone does, like, they can credit it. But it was, "It's not enough to be a good player. You must also play well." So like, you don't just get it given to you in poker. You have to kind of like earn it. And if you're playing like your B or C game, like some percentage of the time, then you're hindering your A game. So it's really good. Spins are really good for being able to play when you're on your A game, and as long as you're self-aware enough to recognize it, well, then you're going to maximize your win rate and like get the ROIs that you're kind of earning. Um, you'll get lots of experience like actually playing poker. Um, you're not just sitting out folding. Like if you play 3 or 4 tables of spins, it's constantly your turn. So it is hard work, but you're just getting massive experience. It's like bricklaying um, or like writing a book or whatever. Like the more you do something, the better you'll get at it, and it's just experience, experience, experience. Like I'll play 2,500 hands. If I have a massive day, like an average 8 hour day, you can do like 3,000 hands easy. And that's just so much more experience than you'd get in a tournament. And it's constant action as well. Like you're involved in every one. So that really um, that really improves you. But you've also got to adjust to people. You can't just sit and play your hands and like wait around. You have to exploit people. You have to use your hood and adjust to what people are playing. And that, to me, anyway, is poker. It's not about playing your hands well. It's about like, and I know it's a really cliche thing to say, playing the player and things like that. But in spins, like it really is, because you've got a sample of, against some of the regs, you might have 5, 6, 7,000 hands against them. So you have a pretty in-depth way of a good sample of knowing how they play. So you can kind of away from the table go through ways to pick it apart and find ways to exploit them. And for me, that's a new challenge that not only makes you better, but makes like the game more interesting and kind of reignited the passion for poker, because you don't really realistically get the chance to do that in tournaments. Like, yes, you might have a few hundred hands or whatever, but when you start filtering them down from position and stack size and stages in the tournament, you never really get a sample that's reliable. Whereas you do get that in spins. But it also means, on the flip side of that, that you need to work hard on your own game to make sure that it's solid enough that you don't have these glaring leaks, because good regs are gonna exploit you for them. So it improves you better overall.